Learn what it takes to be an excellent role player while streaming.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Matt, and I am your host. This is the podcast where we learn how to become better game masters and role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. Also, if you want to take your games to the next level, I create tabletop RPG resources that you can buy that will help you level up your campaigns. You can go to dicegeeks.com, you can go to amazon.com, or you can go to drivethrurpg.com and find my books there. You can just search for Dice Geeks, all one word, or you can search for the Book of Random Tables and you will find a lot of my stuff. All right, guys, today's interview is super cool. Here it is. My guest today is a streaming actor as well as the owner of Dice Barbarian Productions, Anthony Carlson. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me on. This is great.
Let's start off. I like to ask first-time guests, how did you first discover tabletop role-playing games?
Wow. Well, it's a funny story. I'll make it quick because we could go like all day just with this story. But I was 10. It was 1989. So let me date myself for anyone listening. And my brother was working for a company that would like kind of go around and throw out people's old stuff for them. Can't remember what they called it. It's been so long. But this older family was throwing away just a ton of old board games. And inside that chest was an unopened, the old like kind of reddish purple Dungeons and Dragons box set that has like the sorceress and the dragon on it. I keep forgetting what it's called, but it was unopened, completely still in the plastic. And he brought it home and he was like, "Hey, I used to play this. You should try it out." And so I immediately took it to my buddy Billy's house, and the rest was history. We cracked it open, and from that point until I graduated high school and went into the Army, every weekend we were in his basement with the crew playing D&D.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. I know I date myself on the podcast all the time because I was 9 when I first played D&D and it was 1982. So everybody knows exactly how old I am when I say that. So don't worry.
Don't worry. Good. Okay. Great.
So no worries. But that is awesome. What do you think it was about Dungeons and Dragons that just caught your attention so much?
I think just kind of who I was as a kid. I was very fantasy minded. I was very like like at the time I didn't know what it was, but I was really caught up in what it was to experience a hero's journey, like through books or through TV or movies. And but then having the ability at the time to like make up your own adventure, and your best friend is sitting there making up this like pseudo campaign, in their house, and you're like, and I was like this soldier warrior person, and then we had our friends. It was just the experience of like living out a dream, sort of, or like imagination. Like you're outside, you play swords with each other, but now you're like, I've got this character sheet. This person's got a name. I'm living their life for them, and we're having adventures of all kinds. And it was just the ability to to be my own little actor, be my own little member of a book. It just resonated with me as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. I had a similar experience. It was just kind of my chance to be the hero, right? My chance to be the knight or Luke Skywalker or whatever we were doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely, man. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Now it sounds like you played. Did you run games or play more?
Oh yeah, I ran games. I kind of hung up. I hung up my DM dice is kind of my little catchphrase, only because of time. Because I'm also I'm a writer, and I'm finalizing my creative writing degree for the entertainment industry, and it occupies the bulk of my time, my free time, aside from streaming. Well, technically streaming is kind of a job now, so it's kind of weird to look at it that way. But wait, what was the question again? I'm already confused myself with where we're going.
No, that's all right. I was just wondering, like, if you ended up playing more than you ran games.
Oh, no worries, that's man. Right. Reverse. Okay. Yeah. As a DM, I ran a bunch of different games, and growing up, I ran a bunch of different games. And the last game set that I was running was a Fantasy Flight game, Star Wars, as a GM. So yeah, I've done a lot of GMing and DMing. It's just, as a player, it allowed me to enter into the streaming world and kind of try my hand at being I hate to use this word professional because that's really not the right word, but like trying to be a more exposed player, like through the internet, was just an easier avenue to go as a player. But yeah, I've definitely DM'd and GM'd a lot of different games.
Yeah, that's nice. And the Fantasy Flight Star Wars is awesome. So
yeah. It's the narrative dice are fun, can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned some things there that was interesting. You said you're doing a writing degree for the entertainment industry. I actually studied screenwriting when I was in college. And
awesome.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Not to discourage you, but I gave it up about 10 or 11 years ago. So sorry, but not to discourage you or anything, but it was a ton of fun, and I learned a lot about stories and probably what some of what caught me when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons and other games and running games is just I want to tell stories. So I kept doing that. And I haven't stopped. I kind of totally went into more of the tabletop RPGs area, but I just find it interesting. A lot of the people I talk to who love playing role-playing games are also writers, and I just find that fascinating because I think it gives us that creative outlet that we're looking to experience and tell stories, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of funny that you mentioned the screenwriting thing, because that's actually part of my studies right now is where I'm actually having to write like a TV series right now, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. And that's kind of the whole premise behind me going to school, believe it or not, was so that I could learn to transition these skills learned by like creating movies and TV and transition it to this tabletop role-playing streaming experience, because it's kind of like this new subgenre of the entertainment industry that, we're not scripted by any stretch of the imagination, but the ability, because we have this task of, you need to tell this full story just like as a TV show or a movie or something in the theater. But at the same time, it can't be scripted because you have to allow for the organic play of the game. So I already knew the RP side. I've been playing for 20 years. I understood like the idea of building campaigns, but I really wanted to learn what it was like to tell a story from a more theatrical point of view with all of those factors in mind. And so that's why I'm pursuing this, is literally to like, yeah, it's great to learn how to creative write. It's great to do screenplay. It's great learning how to do scripts. I'll probably publish a couple of books for sure, or at least try to, put the quotations, try to get that done. But really it's to set like zero in focus on trying to adapt all that into a streaming environment.
That is fascinating because, and I know regular listeners to the podcast will know that I'm old enough that I was caught just totally blindsided by the whole streaming thing, that I just did not see it coming. I think it's totally cool. I think it's awesome. And I wish I would have had the foresight to see some of it coming, but sadly I missed that train. But it is, I just find it phenomenal, and I think that's kind of the engine that's behind kind of the resurgence of D&D, especially with shows like Critical Role and things like that. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that it doesn't really get the recognition that it deserves kind of officially, just because it is kind of like the younger sibling to the bigger entertainment industry. And especially when you're talking like not as exposed streamers like myself and the people that I work with, where we're still at this like kind of grassroots level, if that's the right term for it. And you've got like Wizards of the Coast that has like all of their own streaming. And so, but streaming, just like you said, especially what Critical Role has been able to do, and Matt Mercer and his gang have been able to do, has absolutely played a massive role of this like second golden age, however you want to, platinum age, however you want to put it, of TTRPG games, because it's been like, hey, not only is this something that everyone can do, but there are so many really cool people that do it. You know what I mean? And it was like, there was this stigma for so long. Like when I was a kid, maybe you experienced it when you were a kid too, where like, it was like you couldn't like just walk around town and talk about like all your Dungeons and Dragons stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes. I know exactly what you mean.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I used to have to literally, I tell this story, and they, so we'd got to go to the mall, me and my buddy Billy. I'll probably mention Billy's name 100 times. He's my best friend still to this day. He's one of my very best friends. He was my first DM, and
that's awesome.
Best friend. And so, we would go to the mall, literally go to a place called Games People Play. And I think it was called like Dice Masters before that. I could have that wrong. And we'd have to first, before we go to that store, we have to go to like, JC Penney's, whatever. I don't know if I'm allowed to say those names on your podcast. Sorry. Anyway, some random store, and like buy a shirt and make sure I get a bag, and then go buy whatever I'm trying to buy at the store, and then wrap whatever I bought in the shirts or whatever that we bought, and then go back and get on the bus, because there were too many times that we would just get heckled because people would see the game store bag or see this, dragon on this book. And it was like all of the, all the things that kids say back in the day, so we used to like literally have to hide like this whole incognito, like sneaking around just to get our D&D books. And, and now that's not, now it's like we walk around with shirts, like broadcasting it in hats, and it's on TV, and they talk about it during television shows. They have total television shows where people are playing Dungeons and Dragons in these really popular TV shows. And it's like this mind-blowing experience that this little 10-year-old inside me is just like so giddy to, to be out and playing with everyone. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't have really imagined how popular it has become, nowadays. Yeah. I remember the early 80s to some degree, having played in 80, having first played in 82, of course, E.T., the older brother was playing in E.T., and, we had the popularity there. But by the time I was in high school in the late 80s and then early 90s, it was like, nobody was playing Dungeons and Dragons. except for, like I've told the story in the podcast before. I walked into a study hall and there was a kid, he was reading I think it was a Curse of Strahd book or like a Ravenloft book. And I just went over to him. I was like, "Do you play D&D?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." And it's like, we're still really good friends,
That's so awesome.
And that was like, I don't even, 30 years ago or whatever it was. And
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And then too, like, and then kind of in the early 90s too, it was the West End Star Wars game really kind of kept things alive, just because at least where I was and some of my friends, because I was able to teach them the game so quickly. And D&D, it didn't come with the baggage of D&D that was kind of circulating and stuff at the time. And it was quite a smaller investment because the people already knew Star Wars. So you're just like, "Hey, do you just want to be in Star Wars?" And they're like, "Yes." So I didn't have to explain anything about the world or anything. And we just, we could hop in and play pretty quickly. But I love the resurgence and seeing Dungeons and Dragons and popular TV shows and things like that is it's just unbelievable.
And these really cool like movie stars walking around. They're like, "Oh, I play D&D too." And there's like this whole thing where like people are playing, like, dude, it's just crazy. It's so cool.
Yeah. And like I said, I just never saw it coming. I mean, years ago, we'd talk about the hobby dying and just video games being played and tabletops, games going away, or card games. People would play card games and like Magic, and they'd play video games, but they weren't going to play tabletop. And it's just totally been, I was glad I was wrong, right? I'm glad I was totally wrong about all of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so now, you've mentioned a few times that you have started streaming. What kind of, caught you about streaming? Did you start kind of maybe watching Critical Role, or what kind of got you into the whole streaming side?
Yeah, it was, I was streaming the whole streaming experience was kind of fascinating to me and my group of friends at the time, people that I actually worked with. And because I'd actually kind of stepped away from TTRPGs for about, not really stepped away, but just didn't play a whole lot for about 5 years.
Sure.
Life
it happens.
Catches up. Yeah. And especially being like young parents and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to find the time. Young parents amongst friends of young parents is just hard to find the time. It's just kind of how life is.
Yeah.
But right about the same time that we started getting a lot of free time, as I had some friends who we started actually streaming video games on Mixer, and we would just kind of all log in together. And it was kind of like, this was in probably like 2013, 2014. We started doing this, maybe 2015, right around that time. Yep. And we did that for a couple years. And then it just kind of organically grew into me having my own streaming, Twitch streaming, back in the day, where I was just doing my local group. It was me and my local group, and it was like really horrible production, like no real like great overlays. It was just pretty much just like putting the camera on the game. And I was really inspired by just the whole Geek and Sundry operation at the time. And then of course, Critical Role, like just kind of stamped it for a lot of us that kind of always wanted to do something. And it was like, oh, okay, I totally think I can do this. Like, I totally think this is something that if I put my heart into, I can do. And so that's kind of the path. So, but my gateway to that was like, I'd stream Overwatch, and we got a little popular locally doing that kind of stuff, but that led into TTRPG streaming.
Yeah. Nice. Now, I'm wondering about streaming. I've talked to a number of people on the podcast about, running games, online and streaming games. But I kind of want to take it from the point of view of a player. Does streaming change the way you play? Like, do you play differently when when you don't have an audience versus that you do have an audience?
Oh, that's a great question. From a player's, I want to say yes, but probably not for the reasons that people automatically think. It's not so much that you're just kind of putting on airs and you're just kind of playing up to the crowd. There are a lot of actors who do that, and that's the way they do it. And that's great. And audience, I think the only real difference is that you have to be aware that you are putting on a performance. And that has a certain obligation to it, to where people, the audience, are choosing to spend their time with you. They could be doing anything. They could be watching Netflix. They could be watching a different streamer. They could be hanging out with family. But for whatever reason, those people are just choosing to spend time with you and to invest their time and in some cases invest their money into you. So that comes with like, you have to have like kind of an onus or an ownership of that to go, okay, I need to bring my A game, whatever my version of the A game is. And when you have a home game, that's not the case. It's just, you're just kind of sitting around, you probably have a drink in your hand, whatever it is. You're just talking to your buddies. Everybody's sitting around, the families are sitting around, the couples are sitting around, whatever it is. And you're just shooting the breeze, having fun. You get that same effect in streaming, but at the same time, it's important that you remember that you're putting on a show, and you have to figure out what that means to you. It's not like I'm going to go be Critical Role. And what is Tony Carlson's version of Critical Role? If that's the approach that you're going to take, it's not going to work, because I'm never going to be Travis. I'm never going to be Taliesin. I'm never going to be Liam. I'm never going to be Laura. I'm never going to be any of the cast, and I'm not going to be Matt Mercer. But what I can be is I can be Tony, being the best actor and player I can be, while at the same time, being true to myself, while at the same time remembering that there is an audience that is choosing to be with me, and I owe them my best effort, if that makes sense. So that's the only difference, really.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So do you keep like the Monty Python references to a minimum, or?
No, we actually, it's funny. It's funny how it works in streaming. That's a really funny question. It's funny how it works in streaming because the chat has a way of dictating that for you.
Oh, okay.
So how we do it is we like to stay, there's a lot. So there's kind of not two ways of approaching it, but I'm going to sum up two ways of approaching TTRPG. First thing people need to understand straight out of the bat, and I've been doing this for about 3 years, going on 4 years now. People need to understand video game streaming and TTRPG streaming. And this is going to sound obvious, but it's really not as obvious as people think that it is, but they are two different things. They are completely different animals. So you can't, or maybe you can, but what I've seen, and we've tried to I've actually streamed with like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different groups streaming channels, and everybody has their own approach. But if you think you're just going to copy whatever the most popular video game person does on their stream and just do that while you're playing TTRPGs, chances are that's not going to work for you, because it's a group setting. Like, it's improv theater, and that's how you have to approach it. So the chat, but in that being the case, we like to interact with our chat. So when it comes to those kind of jokes, like, we're reading the chat as we're playing, like sitting and waiting for our turn. And this is where it's different from like a Critical Role who doesn't engage in that, because they never could. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people in their chat at a time. Yeah. And, so we're watching the chat, and they're actually making the jokes, and they're actually making references to your characters, and they're actually creating fan art and stuff like that. So they actually kind of have a say, like in sports, they call it the 12th man is the fans. Well, like that other player at the table really is kind of the audience, because they're cracking jokes. And so they kind of open up the can of worms, or like, throw the holy hand grenade of Antioch at him or something. And then it's like, from there on, it's like free game. That opens up this conversation or that conversation while you're playing. So really it's kind of funny, because those things are kind of things that you kind of encourage, as long as it doesn't get out of control or like cliche, like where you're just like searching for that funny thing to say, because that comes off way too transparent. Like, your chat will pick that up in a second, but usually it just kind of flows.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's when I first kind of discovered streaming, or at least people, maybe not even streaming, but people who were recording some of their sessions and posting them on YouTube, maybe around like 2012, 2013. It was like, I'd watch, a little bit, or I'd listen to a little bit, and I would think I would enjoy sitting with these guys and playing, but listening to them was a little rough, because they kept making the Monty Python joke or referencing Star Trek or something, which all stuff I'm cool with, but like it was a little too much. So that's interesting to hear you talk about how the chat can take that over. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And it is, you just got to be true to yourself. And that's the biggest thing is like, the biggest thing. So, they say, try hard for the audience, deliver what you can, but kind of the moral of that, I mean, that moral's not the right word, but kind of the guiding principle for me with that is like I said before, I just remember that people are trying to spend time with me, but the other side of it is they're spending time with me because of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not because because of the way that I play TTRPGs, or the people that I play with play TTRPGs, not because they want us to play TTRPGs the way they want it done. They're watching me because of the way that we're doing it. And so if I'm honest with myself and I make my natural flow of jokes or references, it comes off really genuine and really likable, and people really gravitate to that. But if you get that, you get people who you can just tell that they're just trying so hard to get that quick joke in or that quick reference to be like, oh, did you like that, chat? Oh yeah. I made a Star Wars reference. Like, how cool am I today? Like you don't put that pressure on yourself, because it's not going to work for you. Just be yourself and relax, and the chat will just gravitate to you.
Yeah. I think that is absolutely a great point, because I've seen the difference. I've seen, some different streamers who there comes up at the moment, and I kind of think of something that could be funny, as an audience member, and then all of a sudden they say it and it's kind of funny. But when the streamer is just looking at every little word or every little phrase and trying to come up with something funny, you can just tell that's just like, you're just trying to be funny. And it gets old really quick when you can see that they're just really kind of over trying to be funny.
Yeah. And you got it. And my heart goes out to those people, because the core of their thought process is they're just trying to deliver that entertainment because they want their people to be entertained.
Yeah.
But if they would just sit back and just go, you just do you, and the chat will gravitate. Some people might leave. Okay, that's fine. You can't please everybody, but those who stay and those who come and stay are going to stay dedicated to you for who you are. And that's what's most fair to you and to them, because that's the most like organic interaction. And it's an intimate setting. And along the way, it does get like very personal. You get to know people. They get into your Discords, and you get to know about their families and this kind of stuff. And they're making lore up about your characters that's coming from nowhere and making, you know what I mean? So just be yourself, man. Like, that's the biggest thing. The biggest piece of advice is just don't try to overdo it. Unless that's you. If that is who you really are, you're just this overbearing personality and you just go at it, do it. Like, if that's you organically, have at it, but just try to be the most you can be, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I think those are some really great points and some stuff that I hadn't really talked about on the podcast before. So that's really cool. Now, when you're playing, do you put on voices and things like that?
Yeah, well, we try. It's funny because like you try and you end up getting like, a set of like 3 or 4 voices, and they all just kind of circle around those voices or one main voice, and they all just kind of orbit around that voice. But yeah, we try to, and what it isn't that we, and this is what's an important point for people to understand, is it's not required. And I know people say that, and it kind of sounds cliche. I find myself falling into voices, but that's because that's what I did when I was 10.
Yeah. So
that's just how I play D&D, whether I'm sitting at the table with my friends or I'm on a camera. That's just how Tony plays D&D. And sometimes I don't do any voice, and it's just this or just a small variation of my normal voice, but I am in no way, shape or form like a voice actor that's trained. Like, I've never done any acting classes. Like, everything that I do is just organically me and what I've learned. But so, yeah, we do them, but like, no, it's not because we feel like we have to. It's just because it just kind of happens. Like you just kind of get in the groove and you just kind of get in your character, and all of a sudden you start talking like this, and you start getting these weird voices coming out of your brain. You don't know what's going on, and like that's just. But if that's you, just do that. But it's not anything that we try to do. It's just kind of something that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of feel like you did, like you just said, because when I was 9 and 10 and through my teen years, that's pretty much, I always tried to do voices. I thought that's what kind of you were really supposed to do. So I still do it today. Usually very inconsistently. I'll change different accents sometimes between characters, or just because I can't remember what I did last time or something like that. It's just, but I do think it is, it is something connected to Critical Role, of course, because they're all professional voice actors, that some people think that it's required. And then if you do it, you have to be like perfectly consistent all the time or something like they are, which is kind of sad that some people would think that, but I know it's entertaining to listen to them do it. But I mean, I always just think, people just need to kind of lighten up a little bit, and hey, if you want to try some voices, I'm cool with you trying an English accent or or whatever you're going to do. I'm cool with that. And if it changes between, every 5 minutes, who cares?
Yeah. And it's funny too, because the audience is a lot more forgiving than people give them credit for. Like people who go out and they'll say that, the trolls of the world, not to hate on anyone, but some people, that's their bag. They just, like Matt Mercer says things like, it doesn't matter what you do. There's always gonna be somebody who absolutely hates everything that you do. Yeah. So, don't hate back, or just kind of accept that that's how the world is. Kind of in a paraphrase of what he says. And so like the chat's actually really forgiving, because like I can't even tell you how many times, because I stream 2 shows a week, sometimes 3 or 4. Like I'm actually on my 4th show tonight. I'll be doing 4 shows in a row, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then tonight. Wow. And I cannot tell you how, like, I will start the show off and I'm supposed to be doing, one character's voice, and I kick right into another character's voice, and then I'll jump into it, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, who am I doing? And it's funny because I start laughing, the whole group starts laughing, the chat just starts laughing, because it's like I said, it's kind of this intimate setting where everybody's involved together, and they're a lot more forgiving than you think. Like not everybody is a critic who's paid to sit there and do a review of your work. Mm-hmm. These people are sitting around, looking for something to watch because they like TTRPGs, and they kind of get a kick out of what you're doing. So, if you feel like you do horrible voices, mm-hmm. if that's what your fun is, just do it. Like, just do it. And it doesn't matter how great it is or how great it isn't. Like that isn't what matters, because your smile and your gameplay and your love for your character is what the audience is going to gravitate to. And the voice just kind of falls into the white noise of the experience. So yeah, let it fly, man. Whatever you think they act, however you think their arms move and how they act and what they say, like do your thing, and the rest of it will take care of itself. Don't worry about being perfect, because who cares? Like this is about having fun. Like this is this is one of those things where the entire premise of it is to have fun. This isn't work, even though you're trying to make money, you're trying to make yourself something of it. But the premise of it is to have fun. So if that's acting silly and goofy and that's your bag and it works with the people you're playing with, because that's a whole other thing we can talk about. It works with the people you're playing with and it works for your audience. Don't be afraid. At least try it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if, I don't really stream or, record my sessions or anything like that as of yet. Who knows, maybe down the line. But, just playing, I know, just people can tell if you're having fun, and if you mess up a voice or something, it just becomes part of the joke, right? I mean, it's just part of the thing. And if you can just kind of laugh at yourself, you're like, oh, sorry, I gave that town guard the voice of the goblin I was just doing, or whatever, it's just like, who cares, right? Like if you're just having fun, just go with it. And people can tell when you're genuinely genuinely having fun, and that that you're just trying to to do something that was funny, just doing something that was fun, and I think people can tell that, and you're right that they are more forgiving than we think, because they're just there to have fun, and they see you're having fun, and so I think you're absolutely right. Now, I guess just one curious question: are you doing this full time?
Well, at the moment, not really. So,
okay. No,
I'm a project manager as a career.
Cool.
But since COVID, that's drastically slowed down because, the type of project manager I am is very intense in like the construction and fiber lay business. And, COVID kind of stopped, made that very limited for me. We'll put it that way. So currently it's a major focus right now, just because I have the free time to do it. It's not making me rich, like by any stretch of the imagination. Like the people wanting to get involved in this need to understand that there is a process. And if you think to yourself, you're going to go on and put yourself on stream and there's going to be 500 people waiting to see you play Dungeons and Dragons, that's not a truism. That it could be like, I mean, God, I hope it is for you. Like if you please, like if you get that, please, I want to celebrate with you, because that's wonderful for you. But keep things in perspective. But there is a process. So it's slowly becoming more of, it's going to become my main, it will be my something to do with TTRPGs, whether it's streaming or the content creation that I do as a writer, things like that are going to be my primary income. My goal is within the next 5-6 years. And I'm definitely on pace to making that happen personally.
That's awesome. That is really cool. And I know, I get to do RPGs full time now, and it blows my mind. So I just never even dreamed I could have done that when I was a kid. But that is cool to hear, and that I know with COVID and all that streaming and playing online and stuff has just boomed. So this is kind of the time to get into some of that. And I think that's awesome. Now, your newest show, or one of your new shows, right, is called The Ascended. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. So that's great. Like, I'm so excited to talk about this show. The Ascended is a world that is it's using the Savage Worlds game system, and I can go into that a little bit further later.
Yeah.
What I call powered by the Savage Worlds game system, Pinnacle Entertainment Savage Worlds game system. However cool we want to make it sound. Yeah. And it is a futuristic alternate dimension Earth. Modern day, but alternate dimension Earth that actually has a futuristic society, because the history of that Earth is different than ours. What I call Earth Prime. And it's a cyberpunk / superheroes game where we wanted to have the elements of like 300 years in the future, plus some cyberpunk, and then we were like, let's make them superheroes too. And then I created this whole world, and the story premise behind it. And then my good friend James at DiceTyrants, who DiceTyrants is a streamer, is a streaming, a TTRPG streaming, company. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. I've been a part of for a long time. I kind of went to James and was like, hey, I was going to make this a podcast, but I'm thinking maybe we could go stream on DiceTyrants. Do you want to be the GM, take over as the GM, and build the campaign in this world? I built a story Bible, or a show Bible, for those in the industry who know what I'm talking about, for it. It was only like a 40-page story Bible for it, and gave it to him. And he was like, dude, I love this. How do we make this happen? And we just started planning everything out, got the cast put together and thrown in. So yeah, it is a cyberpunk superheroes, web series, TTRPG series on Twitch that I create the world for, and DiceTyrants is the producer and the GM, the facilitator of the game.
Nice. Yeah. For someone in the audience who may not be familiar with Savage Worlds, maybe let's talk about Savage Worlds a little bit, and then we'll dive into the setting of The Ascended a bit more.
Yeah, you bet. So Savage Worlds, if you have, okay, first things first, and I'm not just saying this. If you have not played Savage Worlds, pick it up and do it, people, because it's great. They call it, it's funny, they call it a classless system, kind of a play on words, because gosh, it's so hard. It's such an easy thing to do, but such a hard thing to put in perspective. Basically, any kind of character that you want to create, in any kind of variation within reason, there is nuance to it. Savage Worlds provides a pathway to do that. And it is a system that's basically built off of character attributes, character skills, edges and hindrances, which is, say something that might be, not negative is the wrong word, but there might be not such a most positive character trait, like maybe they're arrogant or they like to monologue or they're, whatever it is. You also get edges, which are kind of like perks to who they are as a person. Like maybe you get extra attacks in your role or whatever it is, or maybe you get extra spell points if you're a wizard, and there's a ton of them. Like I'm really like low barring how vast this is. So you build your character, you take your hindrances that allows you to carry out, to take so many edges in character creation. And then you decide like what kind of, what they call like a background it has. Like, are you going to go like a caster? Are you going to be more like a warrior? And then you start picking those abilities. So you've got your normal strength, agility, spirit, smarts, strength, agility, spirit, smarts. And I think I got them all. And then from those attributes, you build your skills out and you invest dice. So let's say you have, I'll have to get too into the woods with it. Let's say my strength is a D10. I have X amount of points I can put into increasing die types of my attribute. And my fighting can be raised to a D10, but I have to invest it. So if it's like starts at a D4, to go to a D6 is 1 point, to go to a D8 is 2 points, to kind of give you like a how to build the character out. So you're basically building the character's dice that they roll when they try to do a thing. And the base number that everybody has to hit is a 4. That's the most important thing. So not that you're rolling a D4, sure, that's a case, but you have to score at least a 4 for a success. Every factor of 4 above that is what they call a raise or an ace, which means you get a better benefit to, whatever you're trying to do. So if I try to hit somebody with a sword and I roll and I get an 8, that's a hit with a raise. So when I roll damage, if I hit and I roll damage, I get to roll an extra damage dice on top of that. And, if you're trying to do like investigate and so the same premise, but all you have to do is just get a 4 to succeed. But a success doesn't necessarily mean like, I'm trying to investigate this room and find the secret paperwork or whatever. And I roll and I only get a 4. I might find just a small amount of the information I'm looking for. And that's it. But if I get like 3 raises, because I get a 12 or a 16, something like that, I might find out even more information than I was supposed to. So it allows this sandbox of result to happen based off of dice. So then you have exploding dice on top of that. So I'm sure a lot of people know the premise behind exploding dice, but with exploding dice, you roll the dice, whatever the max number is. If the dice rolls on that max number, so if it's a D6 and it lands on a 6, you get to re-roll that dice. If it lands on a 6 again, you re-roll it, so on and so forth till it stops exploding, and then you add all the numbers up together to get the result. So it is a very powerful, it is a very fast, it is a very high intensity game, which makes it perfect for streaming because it's literally like nonstop excitement. Mm-hmm. So that's a quick really probably didn't do it enough justice, idea of what Savage Worlds is.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. I've only been able to play twice, but I had a blast each time I played Savage Worlds.
Oh, great.
So yeah, it was a ton of fun. Hopefully I'll be able to get to play Savage Worlds again, but who knows what'll happen.
Right.
But no, thank you for explaining that, because I know some people might not be familiar with it. And so just to get back to the Ascended a little bit. So you're talking about a alternate Earth cyberpunk superheroes. So you got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So what makes it alternate Earth, first off?
It's an alternate dimension. So in any of I understand, like, I did not go like highly intense. Like, I was not prepared for like the Reddit geniuses out there who like actually have degrees in this stuff. So full disclosure, like, suspension of disbelief is really in play with this. Okay. We're just playing TTRPGs here, folks. We're not trying to, rewrite the world.
Didn't do wormhole theory or anything.
Yeah. Like I did. Yeah. Like, I did not dive into all that. Like, well, this is just a premise, right? Like,
okay,
it's
cool.
just, yeah. And, it's an alternate dimension Earth. So quick thing is, the pseudo main protagonist is Lancelot, which is a drone who's a member of the Keepers. That is an interdimensional AI consciousness that has taken on is tasked, but by itself has tasked itself to regulate and monitor the dimensional algorithms. And if there's any outliers that are exposed in these dimensional algorithms, they dispatch a drone out to where this is taking place, and it is that drone's job to assess it and work to correct it. But with kind of like I kind of borrowed a little bit of Star Trek with the Prime Directive. They have a limited contact protocol that they have to follow, basically, where they have to help the organic beings or life or whatever it is on the planet correct it without like directly just stepping in and fixing things. So that's the base of it. And what had happened is that there was an outlier that blipped on this Earth that had never been discovered. They sent out a drone, come to find out that there was this guy named Dr. Cronus who developed an ascension serum. Long story with that, developed an ascension serum, was released out into the world. And a lot of people didn't make it. A lot of people were infected. And then a very, very small fraction of the few that were infected, it started tapping into the human genome to give them superpowers. And that was Dr. Cronus's whole thing, is he's like, I want to ascend people to take the place of the gods. And there's this whole thing. Can't go into all of it. It's pretty intense.
Sure.
And he's like, and not only that, this Dr. Cronus is now his powers that he developed is he was able to like portal to different places on the planet. But all of a sudden, like, he's actually starting to tap into doorways to other dimensions, but only for like fractions of a second. It's just like it's there and it's gone. Like, his powers are slowly building. And that's what Lancelot, this drone from the Keepers, is detecting, is this guy's like breaking these dimensional barriers. And so Lancelot's like, okay, I can't fix this on my own. Oh, I'm going to go recruit a group of highly developed superheroes or talented people that I can put together and help guide them to stop this person before they end up, this whole thing takes place. So that's the premise of the idea is, Lancelot showed up. He needs to stop Dr. Cronus. He can't do it on his own. So he's recruited this group of individuals, we, the players and our characters, to team up and try to take this bad guy down before it gets worse.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. A lot of layers, there. Really cool.
Yeah. I want to give my DMs. I like to give the DMs and GMs that I work with as much sandbox as possible, so that they can just take this frame that I've built and build a campaign with it.
Yeah. No, it sounds really cool. And now, what I thought was interesting was the kind of the combination of cyberpunk with superheroes. I don't really remember seeing that. I know there's can be some cyberpunk elements occasionally in a superhero world, but like a full-on cyberpunk setting with superheroes, I don't remember seeing that. So that's a really interesting combination.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So like my character Sionis, he can control matter and has telekinesis. But another superhero that we have is Cypher, and she is basically a hacker that through the Ascension Serum has basically adapted her ability to hack as almost she is technology. And there's other variations to it. And the really cool thing about Savage Worlds is that there's so many, and you probably know this, there's so many companions and other books. So for this game, we're using the Superheroes Companion, Interface 0 2.0, and the Science Fiction Companion, all just for this game as reference material. And it's all packed into Fantasy Grounds, and we're able to build our characters through Fantasy Grounds that way. And so it allowed, really, the secret was Savage Worlds, because without it, there would be no avenue for us to create anything. But that's what's great about Savage Worlds is every companion that's built is built off of the exact same base rule system. So if I'm building hopefully I phrase this correctly, if I'm building like a fantasy fighter, they can actually have a battle with an alien from 2,000 years from now. It probably wouldn't go very long, but they could like the mechanics hit, right? But the mechanics of the fighting is exactly the same. So I can build a superhero that has cybernetic implants and has all the, and actually is just a Savage Worlds character in general with all the feats, or excuse me, with all the hindrances and edges, and still have that great mix of superheroes and cyberpunk happening in the motif, because they're coming from these different books by Savage Worlds. And I was able to hodgepodge all these into the storyline. And so literally my guy has a bunch of tech built into him that he had before he caught the Ascension Serum and ascended. That's what it is when you become a superhero, you ascend, and you're actually tagged as ascended by the government. It's this whole crazy thing that James, the GM, came up with. So yeah, he's like a cyberpunk futuristic person living his life, and now he's a superhero on top of it. So it sounds kind of wild, like, oh, this is going to be way too much to hop, but it's not, because the game system allows it to all merge together, and not to mention the incredible cast that we have that's so talented to help pull it off as well.
Oh, nice. No, that sounds really good. And I know exactly what you're talking about with Savage Worlds, that, that each of their kind of add-on supplements, it's all the same rules. So it's just extra stuff. It's just extra, material that could be used in whatever setting you're playing. So that sounds really, really cool. That's why I called the number one. It is the best streaming. It is the best streaming game system, hands down, because of its adaptability and how exciting it is with exploding dice and how the chat can get into that. It just adds, so it's just natural for that environment. Nice. Well, maybe tell us a little bit more about the Ascended. How many cast members, and then how many episodes as of this recording? I know this will air in a few weeks after we record, but how many episodes are you at now? And maybe where can people catch some episodes of the Ascended?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is 5 cast members. That's to include James, the GM. So we've got myself, James, Narissa. I can't give last names because a lot of people aren't comfortable with that, so I'll just give first names. Yeah. So myself, Dice Barbarian Tony, James, who is the GM and owner of DiceTyrants, Narissa, who plays Cypher, DJ, who plays Mobo, and Cypher is the kind of like super hacky, like crazy. She's got an awesome backstory. I can't give anything away, but it's intense. And then Mobo is this 7 foot tall, like big, shape changing, just Goliath individual. He changes shapes and just beats the heck out of everything. And then we have our 5th member is Greg, 1 in 20 D&D. Big B's. I guess I give those titles. So Big B's for Mobo, and Narissa Hart for Ruby Hart for Narissa is for Cypher. But then you got Greg Festo, who is is 1 in 20 D&D. A lot of people know who he is. He plays Spark, who is literally like the embodiment of energy, like electricity, and has, I mean, if you think Thor, but like without all the Viking stuff, this, I mean, he channels electricity through his body and through these like fighting sticks. And so we have this really interesting dichotomy of me. I'm this like psionic, Spark is this elemental electricity superhero. Mobo is this massive fighter and shape changer, and then Cypher, who is our tech hacker, to kind of bring in that whole motif of the cyberpunk superheroes setting. So and it's wonderful. So there's the five of us together. You can find us every Sunday night at 7:30 Central Time, or every Sunday night, 7:30 Central Time, at twitch.tv/DiceTyrants. So just look up DiceTyrants. You can go to DiceTyrants.com. You can look at DiceTyrants on YouTube. And I might as well pitch the YouTube too. YouTube has all the old episodes. And as far as episodes for the Ascended, we just recorded episode 4 last night. It was just done last night. So we're on our 4th episode now. Okay.
And like I said, when this airs, it'll be a few more weeks. So you'll have a few more under your belt when this goes live. So that is really cool. And I will make sure I will put links to Dice Tyrants and to the Ascended's Twitch and YouTube in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com when this episode goes live. Where can people learn more about you? You have your own Dice Barbarian, isn't that right?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Dice Barbarian. You'll see my company's logo there. Also on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. Shout out to my Facebook page, people. I love you guys. You guys are so awesome to support me. And that's just Dice Barbarian RP. So you have to put the RP at the end. It's just whatever, Facebook at Dice Barbarian RP for the Facebook page. And yeah, like the biggest thing is Twitter and Facebook. Like, I'm not hard to find. You guys can send me a message. You can go to the Dice Tyrants Discord. That's in my feed. That is in my Twitter. That's at D Tyrants on Twitter. You can get on the Discord. I mean, it's a major recruiting ground for us. It's where all of our fans, all of our friends, all of our casts, everybody, hangs out there all the time. So I'm not hard to get a hold of, and I'm always open for like conversations. If you got a project you need help on, or you want to bring me in on, hit me up. Don't be shy. Like, I'm not hard to work with. And, if we can come to an agreement or whatever, I mean, just hit me up. I love talking to people. So just find me and look me up and say hi.
All right, man. And like I said, I'll also put some links to your Facebook and your Twitter in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So anybody can find you and send you a message if they want to. Well, Anthony, it was a pleasure speaking to you today. We talked about some really cool stuff. So I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me, and thanks for anybody who's listening. I love talking TTRPGs, man. That's my life. So I thank you so much for letting me come on.
All right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Anthony. It was so cool to dive into kind of the streaming angle from the player side. I hadn't really done that on the podcast before, so it was really interesting to talk to Anthony about that, and I hope it was helpful for you. Anybody out there who's looking to get into streaming should know some of the things that Anthony talked about today on the podcast. As I mentioned in the episode, if you want to check out Anthony's streaming, his games, The Ascended, I have provided links for his company, for The Ascended, in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So head over there, check those out. Some really cool actual play with the Savage Worlds system. Now, guys, if you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You'll get 10 free dungeon maps. You'll never miss an episode of the show. And each and every Friday, I will send you an email and let you know what I am concocting in the mad lab I call Dice Geeks. If you want to support the show financially, I would greatly appreciate it. You can head over to patreon.com/dicegeeks and learn how to support the show there. Also, if you find any value in this show, please like, subscribe, rate, review wherever you are listening to this podcast. Those things help the show immensely. Now, until next Wednesday, keep gaming.